Good morning. You're tuning in to the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session. It is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. It is 9.
Go ahead. We have the conference call going.
Okay, it is 9:08 a.m. This is a virtual meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the Thurston County YouTube channel. A dial-in option is available at 360-252-9020, PIN number 1234. The agenda for today has changed, so I will hand it off to our County Manager, Ramiro Chavez.
Yeah, thank you.
I apologize, I didn't do introductions.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Carolina Mejia. I am chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Menser joining us via Zoom. Commissioner Gary Edwards in the boardroom. To his left is County Manager Ramiro Chavez. Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell joining us via Zoom, as well as other staff members. Okay, County Manager, now I'll go ahead and hand it off to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let me address a couple of comments related to the phone number you just provided. There is under virtual circumstances, we need to provide access when the board conducts a meeting for the public to provide testimony via telephone. And on the last, since the beginning, when we exercise a Zoom meeting, every single citizen has the option to access via telephone and not necessarily via a video conference. So that has been in place. Last week, Commissioner Edwards asked if we can bring the conference call this morning, the phone, which we have it in place. Yesterday, we received an email from a citizen yesterday afternoon stating that the phone number for the conference call was not accessible online. As a result, we updated the website, our website, just about 5 in the afternoon last night. Where we provided the phone number that you stated, as well as the PIN number as to how they can access this morning. And as this morning, we just received maybe a couple of citizens who utilized that access via conference call, in addition to the video conference that you had today. I think it was raised an issue that perhaps the phone number was not placed on the website 24 hours in advance. As far as I understand, there is not a requirement under state law that that phone number should be placed 24 hours in advance. I had a conversation with Elizabeth about this yesterday, and that's how we updated the website, just to make sure the public had access to that phone number. But again, as far as I understand, there is not a requirement in state law that the phone number needed to be published 24 hours in advance. I just want to clarify that. And if you have any questions related to that item, before I can suggest an action on the agenda.
Madam Chair.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
Okay, I want to get this straight. So Mr. Pettit brought it to our attention that we did not need to have, or that we did not have a phone number available for the public to follow along, if you will, because it's not public comment time, I guess. So we did not have a phone number available to the public. He brought that to our attention yesterday afternoon. And then we added it, but we did not add it 24 hours in advance of this meeting, or any meeting, I guess. And consequently, he is alleging that becomes a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. Is that what I'm to understand?
That's his allegation. And again, I did touch base with Elizabeth, and there is not a requirement to place the phone number to access via conference call 24 hours in advance. And Elizabeth is here to provide that perspective if you'd like to ask her.
Okay, I'd like to have council explain why there's requirements and then why we don't have to follow those. They seem like minutia, I think, to the public, but under the Open Public Meetings Act, it states certain things that we're required to do under the law. And one of that is to be, one of them, I guess, is so that the public can keep track of what we're doing. So council, could you, I don't know, maybe introduce yourself at the proper time, but could you tell me that we're legal even though we didn't notice the public ahead of time so that they could listen in? I guess that's what I'm looking at here. I mean, it seems like a minor thing, but it could be a major thing. So are we 100% legal here on doing business today, even though we did not notice the public? And I guess it's my understanding that there has not been a phone available for the public for several months. So, but at least on this one issue, my concern is I don't see any timed issues here that we would be under any kind of an emergency to pass. So could you address that for me, council?
Good morning, Elizabeth Petrich, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. The question about having a phone number on the agenda is not a requirement of the OPMA.
And so consequently, we're doing everything legal by proceeding with the meeting in violation of the well, I don't know, I'm not gonna say it's a violation, but the citizen is alleging it's a violation.
I don't believe you're in violation of the OPMA continuing this meeting this morning.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And one item before you proceed, Commissioner Mejia, Madam Chair. Since I updated the agenda you're gonna be discussing this morning, and I believe I updated 2 in the afternoon yesterday, that was within 24 hours. So, since we posted the agenda for the public, I will ask the board to consider approving the agenda as presented this morning.
Okay, commissioners, have you reviewed the agenda? Is there any questions, comments?
And when you say the agenda, that is this
Yeah,
front sheet,
agenda.
right? Not the agenda for the
Yeah,
meeting
and
this
the-
afternoon.
and the item that I added since we posted was on the item number 9, the preliminary docket. That's the only item that I added, I believe at 2 in the afternoon. So I will ask the board to consider approving the agenda so we can continue on.
Okay.
So you'd like, I can make a motion to approve the updated agenda for the agenda setting work session on Tuesday, January 25th, 2022.
Yes, sir, if you don't mind.
I make that motion.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Mejia,
Aye.
Commissioner Menzer.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Okay, it passes. So with that, we'll go ahead and start on our first setting item, COVID-19 update. And I see Kurt Harding.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Interim Director of Public Health. I'm giving you the update as we have it on January 25th, 2022 for COVID. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that last week we passed a milestone in this state and in the country. It was the 2-year anniversary of the first COVID patient on January 20th, 2020, and that occurred last week. So we've been in the pandemic and response to the pandemic for over 2 years now. In Washington state cases, there's been, since the start of the pandemic, there's been 1,203,311 positive cases, and Washington state deaths, Washingtonians who have died from the pandemic, is cumulative of 10,458. In Thurston County, our total case number is 39,351, and in the last 7 days, we've had a positive rate of 3,899. And our Thurston County deaths cumulative have been 294, but in the last 7 days, unfortunately, we've seen an increase of, we've seen 10 deaths that have been confirmed over the last 7 days. Now, I should caution that those deaths go back into December because sometimes it takes a little while to confirm a death and whether or not COVID was a part of that death. So I don't want to have the viewing public think that there were just 10 deaths that occurred within the last 7 days. That's the confirmations that came in. Our 14-day case rate per 100,000 is 2,714. Just to give you a perspective, last Tuesday, the rate was 1,949. So that is still trending upwards. Our hospitalizations, total hospitalizations are 1,648. But our current COVID patients are 82, with 2 suspected of having COVID. But I want to compare that to last week. Last week, there was 114 COVID patients in the hospitals. Now, I want to also stress that it's too soon to say that this is a trend. And so 1 week doesn't make a trend one way or the other. So I want to caution that we jump on the bandwagon and say COVID cases are going down. That's just 1 week's data. And as everybody knows, numbers can sometimes be misleading. The number of patients on vents are 17. Last week, we had 16 patients on vents. This week, we have 17. And just to give you ICU available capacity, there are 9 airborne infection isolation rooms available. There's 0 rooms available that are non-airborne infection isolation rooms in the ICU. Last week, we had 3 airborne infection isolation rooms available and no non-airborne infection isolation rooms available. So ICU bed availability is going up a little bit. Acute bed availability, 8 for the airborne infection isolation rooms and 6 non-airborne infection isolation rooms. And again, a little bit improvement over last week. And then our congregate care outbreaks, we've had 167 congregate care outbreaks since March of 2020. And this week we have 56 congregate care outbreaks that are currently under investigation. For vaccination statistics here in Thurston County, the vaccine doses given in Thurston County since the start of the pandemic are 486,588. The people initiating vaccination in Thurston County are 67.5% of the population. The people fully vaccinated are 61.3% of the population. People initiating vaccination who are over the age of 16 are 80.1%, and people fully vaccinated over the age of 16 are 72.7%. And then people initiating vaccination who are 12 or older are 78.6%, and people fully vaccinated 12 or older are 71.3%. A couple of additional items I'd like to talk about is one, we continue to have vaccinations at our clinic at the Capitol Mall that runs 7 days a week, encouraging people who haven't been vaccinated to go get vaccinated or get their booster shot. We're testing. When we started when the current surge in Omicron started, we set up a testing site at the fairgrounds running Monday through Friday. And our highest point on January 10th for testing at the fairgrounds was 393. Yesterday and towards the end of last week and yesterday, it's been trending down with our lowest number. It's 95, which was yesterday. So we are going to continue testing at the fairgrounds, but only twice this week. We tested yesterday and we're going to test Friday at the fairgrounds. And then today we're going to move out to our mobile testing sites at Rochester. That's going to be 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the roof parking lot. Tomorrow we'll be in Yelm at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at 301 2nd Street Southeast in Yelm. And Thursday, we're going to be in Tenino from 10 to 1 at the Tenino Quarry House. And then Friday again, back at the fairgrounds from 10 to 1. And again, all test sites are planned for 10 to 1. But if we reach our capacity early, the test site will close early. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Abdulmalik, and she's going to provide additional information.
Good morning, commissioners. As mentioned, our community transmission rates for COVID-19 continue to trend upwards. The numbers that we're giving are based on date of specimen collection. So there is a little bit of lag time between when the confirmed cases come in and when they're so when the testing occurs and when confirmed cases come in. What we're seeing overall is a slowing of the rate of increase in COVID-19 in positive COVID-19 cases. So we may be reaching a little bit of a plateau, but we ultimately don't know. We're watching very carefully to determine our overall trajectory in terms of transmission here in our county. These trends do reflect a lot of what's being seen in Western Washington as well. There were 2 cases that were identified of the BA.2 variant, which is a subvariant of Omicron in Washington state. There have been several more identified around the country, and it's been identified in more than 40 plus countries as well. In terms of what this means, we don't have we're still learning about what that may mean in terms of relative transmissibility compared to the current Omicron variant, the dominant variant that's circulating, as well as any impacts on disease severity and death. But so far there hasn't, even in countries where it comprises a significant number of cases. We're watching those countries' experiences closely to see if there's any there are any safety signals. So that's one piece. The reason why I mention it is because with another circulating variant, that just makes the overall trajectory a little bit. We still don't know what impact this subvariant may have in terms of Washington state, transmission and transmission patterns overall. So that's a situation we're watching closely. I do want to let the public know that there are COVID-19 tests available for order. Right now, folks can go to covidtest.gov and order 4 COVID tests per household. And this is part of a federal program. Our state program did have tests available last Friday. However, those were distributed very quickly, and we're anticipating more shipments in the coming week to 10 days. As those become available, folks will be able to go to sayyescovidhometest.org and request tests for their families as well. And this is in addition to testing efforts, by insurers who should be covering 10 free tests per person per month. Each insurer has their own process in terms of getting compensation for tests purchased. So for folks that are using that option, just make sure that you know how your insurer, what documentation your insurer needs, and how that process works to get those tests. In addition, we are awaiting test delivery at the county level and are working on a plan to help get tests to folks that may have difficulty accessing these other options. And with that, I'm open to any questions folks may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. On those folks that are self-testing, are you encouraging them to call in and let you know if they're testing positive?
Yes. So yeah, we do. So the Washington State Department of Health has a phone number that we can share out for folks to report. As far as our county, our 2610 line is our main line for folks to call in and let us know that they've tested positive. So that's 360-867-2610.
So I guess then my follow-up question would be, the high numbers of folks that are testing positive is relative to those home tests and those folks calling in those numbers?
No, so in alignment with federal guidance on how we count different tests, Only the numbers that you're seeing reflect PCR tests and antigen tests performed that with witness specimen collection. So those are technically confirmed cases, PCR, and probable cases, which are the antigen tests. In terms of at-home tests, because the specimen collection is not witnessed, those are categorized as suspect cases and they are not counted in these numbers. So our transmission rates are likely higher than the confirmed numbers that are reported.
And you mentioned a new strain, I guess. What are the symptoms of the new strain compared to Delta or the old strain? What's the difference?
So really at this point, it's more of a difference in the number of mutations rather than a difference in what folks are experiencing. So the symptoms of COVID, remain very similar to Omicron. This is a variant of the dominant Omicron variant. So people are getting cough, a lot of nasal congestion, sore throat, headaches have been prominent, as well as fevers for some folks. And so those are kind of the more prominent symptoms, but all of the other COVID symptoms have been identified, including GI symptoms, shortness of breath, and others. But there hasn't been in terms of what we know at this point, there isn't a clinically distinct syndrome for this subvariant. It presents very similarly to how Omicron has been presenting, or the BA.1 variant of Omicron, which is the dominant variant, has been presenting.
And I think my last question is, whatever happened to the herd immunity issue? We're going to get to 70%, and then we've got herd immunity, and we're going to go back to life as normal. Where are we at on that? Or has all that changed? And so now it's 80%, or it's never going to happen, or what's the deal?
I think a lot of what we've learned through the course of this pandemic is that there's a lot of pieces to that that are unpredictable, and so the percent of the population that needs to have immunity in order to inhibit transmission of a disease has a lot of variables. One of those variables is how infectious or how contagious an illness is. Omicron was a game changer, being much more contagious than Delta, which in turn was much more contagious than Alpha, which in turn was much more contagious than the initial SARS-CoV-2 virus that was circulating. So I anticipate that that'll be a significant piece that determines when we reach herd immunity. Other pieces to consider have to do with disease virulence. So the severity of illness that folks, so in terms, the other piece, not for herd immunity, but in terms of return to normal, has to do with disease virulence. So whether or not the disease causes severe illness or death, and as well as thinking. So right now we're in the middle of a surge, and there's the high number of cases is straining our healthcare capacity and capacity to respond. Looking forward, while it is unpredictable because the virus may change in ways that make control more difficult, but there isn't a hard number for what herd immunity looks like. We'll know it when cases stabilize, outbreaks are contained, within the community, so that when one person gets it, you might just have one case or a small cluster, but it doesn't cause the widespread rising cases and rapid rising cases that we're seeing now. So unfortunately, we don't have a number. A lot of disease specific attributes do affect what that number is. And really what we're looking for is the type of containment of transmission that would indicate that we've reached that steady state or herd immunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer, questions?
I'll just make a quick comment. The federal testing program that Dr. Abdelmalik mentioned, my mom, who's not very good with a computer, told me that it was really easy. My mom's never found anything related to a computer to be easy. So I went online to just check, and I'll be darned, it is easy. It's so easy your mom can do it. You basically type in your name and it fills in your address, and you press a button, and then you get a USPS confirmation in your email. And I haven't received them yet. I just did it yesterday, I think, but it's super easy. So it's something folks should take advantage of.
Just to follow up on that, Commissioner Menzer, I did mine last week and I already received mine. So they're very quick, they're very efficient. So it's great that they're doing that. Commissioner Edwards covered a lot of my questions in regards to, the self-reportings. And I was wondering as well, is maybe the testing going down kind of at our bigger sites because people are just testing at home and getting that first result and then just kind of not going back or going to the fairgrounds or whatever other testing site is available and testing there.
So yes, that's definitely possible. At this point in time in Thurston County, a positive test is a positive test in alignment with CDC guidance, whether that's an antigen test that one has taken at home or an antigen or PCR test performed by a healthcare provider. So with the levels of transmission being what they are, if you get a positive test, even if it's an at-home test, count that as a positive, take precautions, let your close contacts know. If you work at if you go to school, if you go to work, make sure that folks who may be affected, all know of your status. Just because we are seeing transmission in the workplace, and we're seeing transmission across all sectors and in situations where people gather and have close contact.
Okay.
Chair, could I ask one more question, please?
Yes, Commissioner Roberts, go ahead.
Doctor, at the end of the year, last year, there was a correspondence from you that said employees ought to be working from home when possible. Is that changed, or is it soon to change, or any update due to the new variant issues and such?
So I continue to recommend, with transmission rates in our county being as high as they are, for folks who can work from home to continue to do so. We are seeing transmission in a number of workplaces, as well as clusters where folks are in close contact with one another. So I continue to recommend that where possible, folks continue to work from home. In terms of trajectory, that's a little difficult. We're still, our case rates remain high, and we're still watching to see what the overall trend is in transmission in our county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. A. Thank you, Kurt. On to our next item, homeless strategies update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Merida with Public Health and Social Services. I have quite a number of items for you today, but I will start as usual with the rental assistance program update. So at this point, Community Youth Services serving residents of Thurston County who are between the ages of 18 and 24. They've served 179 households, and in progress, they have 271. spending of $1,369,000 or so in rental assistance dollars. Community Action Council to this day has served 3,616 households in Thurston County. Rental assistance going out to the tune of $25.3 million and utility assistance at $1.2 million. And they're steadily serving households at 30% below area median income and below at about 60% of the folks that are being served. Commissioner Edwards, you'll be glad to hear that Tom Webster has reached out to the Department of Transportation twice now to see about that encampment that you've mentioned several times on agenda setting meetings in the past to remove those items. So we are in progress working with the Department of Transportation on that matter. Hotels. So as you may or are aware, the City of Olympia on December 8th of 2021 removed the campers on Deschutes Parkway. And put a number of them up in hotels. Another subsequent community group put another group of those displaced residents into a separate hotel. We have since 2 weeks ago assumed payment of the Deschutes Parkway residents' hotel rooms due to having received some ESG or Emergency Solutions Grant COVID dollars from the Department of Commerce specifically to respond to this particular sweep. Those funds will go towards paying for those hotels and also amending Olympia Mutual Aid Partners contract to provide services leading up to nearly 24/7 support at one of the hotels by mid-February. We are also still supporting by paying for hotel rooms at a separate hotel for about 18 rooms of other Deschutes residents. Currently, a community group is supporting those residents, and we're working on ways to find access to resources for them to continue that support as they are doing it on a volunteer basis at this time. And then Regional Housing Council is tomorrow, Wednesday, January 26th at 4 p.m. You can find the link at the board. If you Google Thurston County Regional Housing Council, there will be a link there to register for that meeting. You can also register for public comment and you can join us there. And that's my report for today.
Thank you, Keely. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, thank you, Keely.
Commissioner Menzer?
Yeah, Keely, I just wanted to, I'm sure you've heard about this, but the rapidly evolving plan that we worked on with helping Olympia with the Deschutes and the hotels and the grant from the state, which is great, and all of that. Just, you know, I think I'm trying to remember, there was 2 or 3 hotels involved, but then there was going to be a consolidation to one, I think, to help manage it. And that ended up being in Lacey. And Lacey wasn't feeling like they were properly looped into that's where we were headed, and that was going to be the result, because initially there was going to be a shorter period of time that folks were going to be there. And then we extended it, and it's good that we did that and we had funding to do it. But I just want to encourage you to, I'm not sure, I thought Lacey had an equivalent person to you and Olympia's homeless coordinator. And if they do, then you guys should really be working together. And if they don't, then we need to, find that person that Lacey identifies as a point person, so that these quick decisions and stuff are properly disseminated through our jurisdiction. So hope you would help us on that.
Absolutely. I meet almost every other day with Rick Walk from the City of Lacey for that very purpose. So we've been meeting very deliberately outside of the Regional Housing Council's technical team, which is a weekly meeting between Tumwater, Lacey, Olympia, and Thurston County. We've been meeting very frequently to address the concerns of Lacey and to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of communicating between the jurisdictions involved. So we are working on that.
All right, thank you. Committee manager.
To follow up to that, Commissioner Messer, I have been meeting with the city managers from Lacey and Olympia, and the concern was taken loud and clear. that we need to continue to communicate, especially if some of the activities that we do or the actions, affects within the city boundaries of Lacey. In fact, the result of that conversation, we revised slightly the plan where we are now gonna be consolidating the individuals. So we're gonna be managing the 2 hotels, the Super 8 as well as the Olympia Inn. And that was really the result of hearing the concerns from, at least from the city manager. So we revised that plan slightly. I provided that feedback to, I believe, Scott Spence. And so we're managing 2 hotels at this point as opposed to consolidating into 1. That's an update.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And I
Mayor.
have no questions. Thank you, Keely.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, the review of the BoCC draft agenda for the meeting of January 25th, 2022. So the agenda for January 25th, 2022, call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the Tuesday, January 25th, 2022 agenda. Approval of the board meeting minutes from January 18th, 2022, and those have been making their rounds. I hope everyone had a chance to review them. Opportunity for the public to address the board. Ramiro, is there anything?
You probably will receive public testimony this afternoon, and on your agenda is for you to consider approving what we call a home fund. And that might be probably something you might be receiving public testimony this afternoon.
Okay, thank you. County manager's update.
I don't have any specific follow-up this afternoon.
Okay, and then moving on to consent items A through D. Item A, emergency services, just 2021 Emergency Management Program Grant, American Rescue Plan Act.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed this item last week, and for your considerations to accept the grant of $43,978. This grant is coming from the Emergency Management Performance from the American Rescue Plan, which is coming through the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the FEMA. That will be the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The purpose and the intent of this grant is to install technology equipment that will enhance the use of the Emergency Coordinating Center, the ECC, that we have in the Tilly campus. You had a brief conversation last week. This item was a new grant, is a new expenditure, and that will be included on your first quarter budget amendment. So we're tracking on that as well. I believe Kurt is here. Ben is out of the office on a well-needed vacation, but Kurt is available to answer any questions related to this item.
Hello, Kurt, go ahead. Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I believe we've covered this adequately, thanks.
Commissioner Menzer?
Nothing.
I have no, sorry, I interrupted you. And I have no questions.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners.
I jumped the gun there too early. Okay, moving on to the next item, item B, Human Resources, Board of Equalization's request to convene. And I see Ruth Elder pop up. Commissioner, County Manager Chavez.
Thank you, Commissioner, Madam Chair. This is related to a yearly action the board may consider taking. And this is pursuant RCW 8248010. The Board of Equalization requests the County Legislative Authority of the Board to convene at any time to address the workload they have based on the petitions they have received. And the petitions needs to exceed 25 or 10% of the number of appeals filed on the preceding year, whichever is greater. Just to give you a perspective, the number of petitions they have filed so far in 2021 was 669. That exceeds the 10% of the number of the petitions that we received in 2020, which was 497. This is again a yearly request that will give the Board of Equalization flexibility when to meet as they see fit in order to address the backlog. Ruth?
Good morning, Commissioners. Ruth Elder from the Board of Equalization. Be glad to answer any questions you have about this. As the county manager well said, this is just a routine annual requirement in order to convene beyond our regular 28-day session in the summer.
Thank you, Ruth. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, ma'am.
Commissioner Menzer? No question. Okay. Thank you, Ruth. Moving on to the next item, item C, Public Works, reappointment to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, for your considerations to reappoint Council Member John Cathy as representative for the City of Tumwater to the Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. This appointment, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee is composed of representatives from elected officials from the different jurisdictions as well as the staff and members of the industry. I believe this year, this year, Commissioner Mejia serves on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And this particular appointment is the recommendation from the City of Tumwater for you to consider reappointing, again, Councilmember Cathy to the next term, which is January 2022 to January 2025. And I believe we have Amanda from Public Works to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Menzer?
No.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Okay, on to the next item. It's the auditor's approval of the voucher list. Any questions on that? Commissioner Edwards?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer?
Nope.
Sorry, Commissioner Edwards, were you going to say something else?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so moving on to item 4, ordinance to create a countywide home fund. I'll pass it to you, County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This item has been under discussion by the board for quite some time. Attached for your consideration is an ordinance, and I have attached the final ordinance. It has been signed in your packet by the prosecuting attorney. This will consider we have do a little bit of a cleanup based on the last conversation that you had. One significant change that I'd like to highlight is if you go to page 5, under item 3, and in some portions of the previous version that you saw, we were accepting the city of Olympia as well as the city of Tenino because they passed their own home fund. This language would remove that exception out of the proposed ordinance, and we added the last part of this language. And let me read this, and this is aligned to what the Department of Revenue actually does in relation to those two jurisdictions. And let me just read the whole item number 3 for your consideration. Item number 3 is the Assistant County Manager and other appropriate officers are authorized and directed to enter into such contracts with and provide such notices to the Washington State Department of Revenue in accordance with RCW 42.14 and other appropriate state and legal agencies and offices for collection and distribution of the receipts of the tax imposed by the ordinance, including a credit against tax for the full amount of tax imposed by the City of Olympia and the City of Tenino pursuant RCW 482.14.530 part of CC. And this language is much cleaner than the previous language. I just want to highlight that's the only change, significant change that we have added since you last reviewed this. And this afternoon, when I present the item, I will go in more detail for the benefit of the public.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, my question would be, we had a public, it's probably for legal, I suppose, but we held a public hearing on the concept of this ordinance some time back, late last year, I believe. And I'm questioning if we continue to make adjustments to the verbiage in the ordinance, is there any requirement that we allow the public to review the final ordinance before it is enacted? either through a vote of the people or through councilmatic process.
So Commissioner Edwards, if I may, you asking if this particular action requires a public hearing?
Well, we had a public hearing. I've heard comment that we did not need a public hearing to do this. But being we had a public hearing, are we required to have the public see the final draft as part of that? So that's what I'm wondering, and I'm wondering if legal can answer that for me.
So I can probably state from the publishing point of view, we have published this agenda item last Friday. As a requirement, we publish any items that the board considers in the upcoming week. So we have met that, and it has been available to the public, not just this latest version, but the previous version, as the board has considered going through the many revisions. That's the only thing that I can attest to the fact is the publication of the many different versions, as well as the publication of this final, which was published last Friday, as we normally publish any items the board may consider in the upcoming week. That's the only thing, the attestation that I can provide.
Oh, okay, I respect your position on this, County Manager. I guess I am asking for legal to, all they gotta do is say, yeah, we're okay. I thought that was the point of having legal here, to answer questions for commissioners, that's all.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
If I understand the question correctly, it's whether or not after when an ordinance is under review and public hearing is required for that particular ordinance, because not all ordinances are required to have a public hearing. But if you're talking about an ordinance that is subject to public hearing and the public has made their comment on it, and then the purpose of the public hearing is for the board to hear from constituents. And if the board decides to modify the ordinance in a particular way that does not change the scope of the ordinance, then you do not need to bring it back to the board. For example, if an ordinance was considering to create a particular district and they identified the boundaries of that district, if the board were to change the boundaries of that district, that would be changing the scope of the ordinance. And in that kind of a case, you would need to go back to have another public hearing. However, if it's just changing within the scope, that's up to the discretion of the board, and that's why you have a public hearing, so you can take in other considerations that you hadn't thought of before. So it all depends on what the changes are, if it requires another public hearing. But generally speaking, you do not need another public hearing because you're always within your, we make sure that you're within your scope of that ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Council. I would follow up, Madam Chair, with my concern basically all along has been on this issue that we should let the public vote on this, and then that way there's no question. I've heard a lot of comment from the support side of this issue, and it's very obviously there is a lot of support for it. But I just always prefer when we're talking about, and I use 10 years as an example because this ordinance is gonna go on forever, I think. I don't see any sunset clause in it. So over the next 10 years, we're gonna raise $50 million to spend on this homeless problem. And I don't think we have a adequate plan that we can explain to the public why we're doing this. So I'm just an advocate for allowing the public to vote whenever we get something of this magnitude. I don't see that there's any big rush. We've been dealing with this for the past 10 years, for an example, I'll just use as an example. And things have continued to get worse, and I have not seen an improvement up until now in the past 10 years. In fact, it continues to get worse. So I really do think if we're going to develop public trust, we should always ask the public what they think about this. So that's just my point of view. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Menzer?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 5A, interlocal agreement with the city of Tumwater for island annexation. And I see Jeremy Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is a follow-up to the public hearing you held jointly with the City Council for the City of Tumwater last Tuesday, January 18, 2022, which they provide public testimony related for you to consider approving the interlocal agreement with the City of Tumwater to continue with the process to incorporate 12 islands within the municipal boundaries of Tumwater. That has been, I believe, one of the main objectives of the board for a long time, to work with the local jurisdictions as to how we're going to be eliminating those islands within the local jurisdictions. So the City of Tumwater took an action to approve at that time the interlocal agreement. You discussed this matter this past Thursday, January 20th, where you provided direction to bring this item for final consideration. And Jeremy is available to answer any questions related to this item.
Jeremy, anything to add?
Madam Chair, no, I do not have anything to add to the county manager's summary of this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Director Joshua Cummings. Go ahead.
Hi, Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Thank you, County Manager. I also want to just add just a quick note of thanks to the board. This was direction that we received multiple years ago to create efficiency and clean up the islands in a professional and partnering kind of way. And Jeremy has executed that with the interlocal agreement. This is kind of a big deal for our county. And I just wanted to take this moment to say thank you to the commissioners and to Jeremy for their hard work, and to the county manager for supporting legislation that got us to this point. So big deal. Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Menzer?
Nope.
Okay, no questions for me. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to public health. Item 6A, Healthcare Authority contract.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I just received some information that those two items, items 6A and 6B, they're not ready for the board to take an action. We have some language with the contract from the Healthcare Authority that we need to clarify. So I will request for your diligence or your indulgence to remove those two items from today's agenda, and I will bring those items later on when those items are ready.
Okay, so item 6A, which was Healthcare Authority Contract K5737, Lead Expansion Services. And item 6B, amend Julota Case Management System Agreement for Lead Program, are stricken off today's agenda. That concludes. We're going to go to the standing items. 7A, commissioners will report on board work sessions and assigned committee meetings, providing updates on actions taken as well as upcoming issues. Item 7B, the county manager will review the Board of County Commissioners schedule for the week of January 25th, 2022. And item 7C, adjournment. So with that, we will conclude the Tuesday, January 25th agenda. Anything commissioners would like to add?
No, ma'am.
I reference this, Madam Chair. I guess I missed part of that. You said there was, did we want to add something? I guess I missed part.
No, so we struck off item 6A and 6B.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Be a short meeting.
Yeah, short meeting.
Okay.
So that will lead me to a suggestion, commissioners, if I may, Madam Chair. As you will review the next week's agenda, which February the 1st, that's very small agenda. We only have one department item. Just wonder if you would like to consolidate those items on today's agenda. And perhaps consider canceling the next week's agenda, because we don't have any items really for beyond what you will see today. It is next week is scheduled for a proclamation for African American History Month. That's something, the board takes action on in February. We can probably move that item the following week in February, if that is, just like to give that framework for the board to discuss. Just curious.
I guess we can go ahead and review the agenda for February 1st, and then we can decide to move these items either to this week or to move forward. Does that sound all right, commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
could
Go ahead.
I ask legal a question on this issue?
Okay.
I don't know, we've come under scrutiny about not having a meeting when we're supposed to have a meeting. Are we okay to cancel meetings without, because I guess it inhibits the public comment process is the way it's been brought to our attention. I just wonder, are we okay doing that, ma'am, council?
And Elizabeth, are you there? Yeah, there she is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the board could cancel meetings.
Thank you very much, council.
Can I clarify something? With Ramiro, not the county, not the prosecuting attorney. Ramiro, are you saying that the item, there's a consent item and a department item? Are you saying to move those till today or to push those back to February 8th?
No, I think move it to today, except for the vouchers. But moving to today, I think those items are ready. You can judge that based on the review of those items. The question is the proclamation, whether we can bring the proclamation for this afternoon as well, and that will be a week in advance of the African American History Month. Anyways, this is all just for your consideration, Commissioner.
The clerk has a question.
Go ahead. I cannot see her.
Sorry, good morning. If we move the items, I would ask that we move the proclamation to February 8th. We've done some community outreach to members, so give some heads up to them.
And Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
On consent items, on item A for Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, I believe I heard the county manager say that Ben Miller Todd is not available today. And that particular issue, I was in attendance to a meeting last week, and there was quite a bit of discussion about rates to be charged on this particular issue. And so rather than move this to today, I guess I would prefer it gets moved to the 8th if there's no time element involved, so that we can clarify some of the concerns brought up by the EMS council members about this issue. And I wonder if there's a time element at all. And maybe Kurt knows the answer to this, because he's got many hats on.
Yeah. Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Kurt Harden, Interim Public Health Director. So on this one, though, you can move it to February 8th. It's not going to, I don't believe, can have any impacts if it does go to February 8th. I do know there were some discussions on different rates. But I also am prepared to discuss those items here this morning. And then if you need additional information, we can move it to February 8th. Or if I satisfy your questions, then we can turn around and schedule it, or you have the option to schedule it for this afternoon.
Okay, I guess whatever Madam Chair says, I didn't know if you were up on it or not, sir. I would have asked, so.
Madam Chair, if I may, can we just review the agenda and then the board can make that determination?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead for each item. Commissioner Menser, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the same thing. Let's take your suggestion to review the agenda, and then we'll know what we're talking about.
Okay, so the tentative meeting for Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, 2 p.m. call meeting to order, Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. Approval of the Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 agenda. Approval of the board meeting minutes from January 25th, 2022. At 2:05, there will be a presentation proclamation for African American History Month.
Yes, Commissioners, every year, the month of February is a national proclamation to have the African American History Month. So this proclamation attests to the fact and also attests the Board of County Commissioners proclaimed February 2022 as the African Heritage History Month in Thurston County. As you heard from the clerk of the board, I think delaying this for the following week will be appropriate, so that will give us the opportunity to gather community members so it can be part of that proclamation.
Thank you. And there's also a proclamation attached to the 2022 proclamations. I'm not sure if the rest of the commissioners have had a chance to review that, but it is attached there. Okay, moving on.
So,
Are we good?
Item 3A, would you like to go to item 3A, Madam Chair?
Yeah, so we'll go to item 3A, which is the resolution for private ambulance license renewal.
Yeah, thank you. This is a yearly action the board takes, and this is related to licensing applications for the 3 private ambulance services that we use in the county. Emergency Medical Services, Medic 1, request again every year for the commissioners to approve the ambulance license applications for the American Medical Response, Olympic Ambulance, and the Falk Ambulance. Under the Thurston County Code, it requires to take this action on a yearly basis, and also requests to secure a license fee of $100. The license fee of $100 has been a source of discussion, at least since for the last couple of years. That doesn't even cover the process of those applications, but that is stated in code. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I believe the board raised that fee, and I can remember the old number. I think it was close to $80 or something, move it up to $100, but it still is not enough. Again, in the EMS Council, as Commissioner Edwards stated, reviewed this item on their January 19, 2022, and I believe they recommended approval of this application. So I leave it right there in terms of introducing the item.
Okay, thank you. Kurt, anything to add?
Just that this is, like the county manager said, this is an annual process. The challenge is that whatever the ambulance companies are required to put into their application, what they will charge patients for transport. However, in the county code, it does not provide for Medic 1 or the EMS Council or the Operations Committee to approve or reject what their costs are going to be. It just requires them to put that into the application. And so therefore, I would be hesitant to get into whether or not the costs are appropriate or not appropriate, because I don't believe the county ordinance allows us to do that. So what we do is we just forward it up as a business application, and it's been through EMS Council, it's been through the EMS Operations Committee as well, and it's been recommended approval from both. And did that address your concerns, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. And now I have no concerns.
Okay, no further questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Munster?
No.
Okay, and so with this item, are commissioners comfortable with moving it to this afternoon into consent item?
Yes.
I am, ma'am.
Okay, so that's 3 thumbs up, so this will be in today's consent item. And so now, okay,
Commissioners.
thank you, Kurt. Okay, item B, it's the auditor's voucher list for January 17th. And so I'm guessing with that, it would be moved to February 8th.
Yeah, let me check with the clerk to see if we have the actual amount, and either we can move it to this afternoon or delay it to the next week. With your concurrence.
Commissioners?
I would prefer it goes to February 8th, I guess, because I have not had time to review it.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So with that, on to department items, and there's only one. It's from Emergency Services, and it's Medic One EMS Agency's COVID-19 High Probability Unit Contracts.
So a little bit of history, and Kurt can provide additional perspective on this. Last year, as you may recall, we had some issues related to capacity when the hospitals was reaching a lot of issues on the emergency room, which created a backlog on the emergency services. And the result of that backlog, while waiting patients to be admitted to the hospital, Medic One developed this high probability unit, which really gives the opportunity to enhance the services and address those backlogs. The Board of County Commissioners approved that to use ARPA funds to meet the demands of this particular, what they call surge. And so this, for your consideration, is to approve the contract to continue to have this option to address the potential backlogs at the hospitals related to the COVID-19 emergency. If you approve, this particular contract will go from all the way through September 30th, 2023. And I believe this is already in the appropriations for the 2022-2023 biennial budget the board approved. Kurt?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Kurt Harden. Yes, that's the history is correct, and we are using ARPA funding, and since the appropriated ARPA funding for last year, but we didn't utilize all of their $300,000. We did not utilize all that, and that was for all 3 years. We're just rolling the ARPA funding forward, and I'll ask Robin if I'm incorrect in my details here, but we're going to continue to use ARPA funding. We also will be scaling down the HPU because it's a surge, and so therefore, as COVID cases come down, as transport requirements come down, we will also stand down the HPU at some point, and we're hopeful within the next 3 to 6 months that we'll get to that situation where we can stand down the HPU, but we've extended it through 2023 on the outside concern that we could still be in a surge situation with COVID through 2023.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think my concerns are adequately addressed. Thank you.
Commissioner Menzer?
Can you explain like the name high probability unit? What does that mean, and what is it? Why is it called that?
So the high probability unit was designed so it had a high probability of transporting COVID patients. So that was how it was named. And like anything else in government, once you name it one, it stays with that. And no matter how hard we want to try, we're not going to change the name off of high probability unit. So we've got all 12 fire agencies understanding high probability unit. And at this point, it's not worth the effort to try to change it to a different name. If that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I have no questions. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, commissioners, with this item, do you feel comfortable with having it this afternoon, or would you like to wait until February 8th?
I'm okay with this afternoon.
Me too. Let's get it done.
Okay, so this item is moved to this afternoon.
Okay, so as a result, we'll cancel next week's Board of County Commissioners meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. With that, let's move on. Let's move on till PIO check-ins, and then after that, we'll take a break. Proclamations and awards.
Good morning, Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board. The proclamation for African American History Month will be presented on Tuesday, February 8th now. Nicole Miller has very graciously reached out to employee groups and community members in groups, and we'll update them of the schedule change. That is all for proclamations unless there are questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, ma'am.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to advisory boards and commissions.
Included is the application from Chris Leicht for reappointment as a regional representative for the Capital Area Regional Public Facilities District Board. And this was first distributed and reviewed on January 12th. Regional representatives are required to be appointed or reappointed by the legislative bodies of Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and here at the county. So have you had the chance to review, or if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those as well.
So I have a question with this. Questions first, Commissioner Edwards, I apologize.
No, I'm listening to your question. You probably answer. Go ahead.
Commissioner Menser?
No, go ahead. I'm good.
I have a question because this is one of the new committees that I just kind of found out that, we had to appoint. And so my questions are that, they have to file an annual financial statement and annual reports. And I've never, last year was my first year and I didn't see a report from this committee. So when they file it, like, who does it go to and who sees it and who monitors this?
I believe that is filed to the state. So I don't know who to answer to your questions, Commissioner. As we discussed, this Public Facilities District Board is required to be formed when related to particular projects. They have been dealt with the park, as in Lacey, the RAC Center, as well as the Children's Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Those two projects were funded by the state, in which the funding stream, I believe, requires the formation of this board to oversee those two projects. So I don't have the answer as to who provides the report, but as soon as I can find out.
Can I ask something? Because over here under duties of the board, it specifically says that they shall file annual financial statements and annual reports with Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and the county. And so I was just wondering if they're filing reports with each of the jurisdictions. A conversation for another time, I guess. It's, just wondering, curiosity more than anything.
No, those are good questions, and I unfortunately don't have answer to those questions at this point. Certainly, if you like, I can probably find out how the mechanics of that board is,
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Menzer.
So looking at the info sheet on the back, we've got one jurisdictional rep per jurisdiction, and then we've got 3 regional reps, and Mr. Leicht is a regional rep. And that means that he's appointed by all the jurisdictions. So I guess my question is, has he gone through the other boards? Are we first in line? Are we last in line? Do we know if he has the support of Lacey, Olympia, or Tumwater?
Yes. This item will also be on the City of Lacey's agenda for February 17th. As of late last week, City of Lacey, who provides administrative services to the board, had not yet heard back from Olympia or Tumwater. So I will check in again, and I think it's just the reappointment is making its rounds through each jurisdiction.
I looked at his resume. I don't have any problem with this reappointment. He looks very well qualified, and he's been serving, and we don't have any other applicants. So it seems pretty straightforward to me, but just wondering about that.
Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I guess you did ask my questions, and so my concern is if a constituent was to ask me about this, and could I explain what's going on here, I'd be in the dark. And so I would appreciate some information. I'm sure I have no questions about the candidate whatsoever, but I do, when duties and assignments are passed legislatively to us, I guess I would like to know more about them. So that's kind of where I'm at on that issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will follow up with the questions that Commissioner Mejia asked.
Okay, more to come, more knowledge being passed out, sounds like.
So for this reappointment, should we, are we comfortable with having it this afternoon or moving it to February 8th? Commissioner Edwards?
I guess if I had my druthers, I'd say February 8th, especially if Lacey's not taking their action until a week or so later.
Commissioner Menzer?
The term expires March 1st, so that seems fine to me. February 8th is fine.
Okay, so we'll add this item onto February 8th, and hopefully by that point, we'll hear back more information on that. Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Menzer.
Before we moved off item 6, I just wanted to see if there's an update regarding the status of the boards and commissions handbook that we've been working on for a while. Either county manager or clerk of the board.
Hello, sorry. Yes, we have a finalized version of the handbook for distribution. We did receive just a few comments, just feedback from a couple of other departments, and we would like to include those in it. So I will distribute that this week, and once I receive final approval, we will bring a resolution forward.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for advisory boards and commissions? Okay. 1 second. PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. The website redesign kickoff with the consultant is February 17th. Sherry Ilg with IT and I held a meeting last week with all of the web coordinators to answer questions about the website and talk about what's coming up. This is going to be a 12-month process, and we are very excited to get started. By the end of this week, there will be a survey on all of our external-facing websites for user feedback. And I really recommend any residents who regularly use our website take the 5 minutes to provide their feedback about their experience using the website and what they would like to see on the new website. The data that we get from this survey will help guide how we move forward on the project. We will be putting something out on social media about that and on our homepage We want it to be not forced, but natural. So if people are visiting our site, I recommend that they actually do the survey. It would be really great data to have. Brian and I will be bringing the 2022-2023 communications plan and overview of last year's communications activities to a upcoming commissioners check-in for your review and approval. So that is coming. And then lastly, I'm continuing to work with the work on the design and timeline with a design team and project manager for the Atrium project. I will also be working on some communications deliverables with central services and the project manager for internal and external stakeholders soon. And hopefully that will answer some of the questions that I've been receiving and stop some rumors. So pending any questions, that's what I have.
Commissioner Edwards?
I think my only comment would be, as we move forward with this, is there any chance we could have easy access to phone numbers for people that have questions about what this or that might entail, or if there's any confusion about communication with the county? For those individuals that are challenged, they're maybe used to making a phone call for clarification. I don't know how much it'll be used, but I just think it might be important to make sure that we have adequate phone numbers in different locations.
Are you talking about for the website?
Yes.
Yes, it's going to be very user-centric so that it's easy to go on, and
Gonna have plenty of phone numbers for people that.
it's going to have lots of information easily accessible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Menser?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Megan, I do have one question. Where is the survey currently available?
It is not currently available. IT is working on putting it into the system so that when someone uses the website, it'll just naturally pop up. It's not going to be a link that's going to be available. It will just naturally pop up when they're using the website.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 10:40.
You're live, Commissioner.
Okay, perfect. So we are picking up on the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session. We are on item 8, legislative update. County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to walk you through the report as the legislative session moves quite a bit fast, as you know. We continue to update the report, so I will be going through the report. It is in your packet. I just went through last week, halfway through those bills, but we added a couple more since we have it in a numerical order. We'll start from the beginning, and I will highlight the ones in red because those are new. They have been added to the packet. So let me begin on page 1 of your report. That will be in gross substitute House Bill 1232. This requires cities and counties planning under the Growth Management Act to consider single-family residences such as detached dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes in the urban growth areas in the housing element of the comprehensive plan, and to consider housing locations in relation to employment locations when making provisions to meet the need of all economic segments of the community. Recommendations for the board to support that bill. Moving on to House Bill 1627. And again, as I went through this last week, if you have any questions, please stop me. House Bill 1627, that's under urban government services may be extended beyond the city and urban growth areas boundaries to meet the needs of those living within such communities, such as water, sanitary sewer systems, and storm drains may be provided to properties outside of these boundaries. That will be, for instance, if the city of Lacey sewer and providers can go beyond the city limits into the Lacey urban growth area, which it goes right now, but this particular bill allows you to provide the services beyond the UGA, as an example. At this point, the CPED is needs further review, so my recommendation is to be neutral at this point to see what the consequences and see how this bill moves along. Moving on to page 2. And will be House Bill 1631. And this establishes a network of sustainable farms and fields advisors at the State Conservation Commission to assist agricultural producers and food processors in increasing energy efficiency, sequestering carbon, and reducing greenhouse gases. What this particular bill does is provide a services to farms they can help them go through this particular element of reducing the greenhouse emissions as a result of their activities. The recommendation at this point is to support the bill. Moving down, we covered most of the bills. Moving on to page 3. And let me stop on House Bill 1683. We review this item, and this is related to, it's 1684. Is this related to public health and the fluoridation of the drinking waters? Commissioner Edwards asked how deep this legislation goes in terms of this new legislation will apply to how many of those utilities, and it will be applied to 15,000 or more service connections. That's the threshold. It doesn't go beyond that, below that.
Thank you.
Just need to follow up on that question that Commissioner Edwards had.
Thank you.
So we covered most of those bills, so I'm going to start line item by line item, starting on page 4. And that's 1719. So let me put my notes. House Bill 1719 removes the prohibition of the use of acquisition ammunition. That's related to the Sheriff's Office. I recommend the board not to take a position on that. Moving on to 1722. That is the concerning the acceleration of broadband deployment. And what it does is it really allows for what it calls a micro trenching in as a result of improving the broadband. What it does right now, the legislation allows for trenching, which is deep trenching. And this particular legislation allows for micro trenching, which is going to be more effective to cross any particular roadways, any particular public infrastructure per se, as a result of providing broadband. My recommendation is for the board to support that. 1723, and again, this is related to the broadband, establishes the Washington Broadband Assistance Program to provide low-income persons with reduced rates and eligible voice and broadband services. This is in alignment with the agenda item that you have on your legislative agenda. It supports any type of broadband that really addresses the low-income individuals, and I believe this bill addresses that. My recommendation is for you to support it.
County Manager, do you want questions along the way?
No, please stop me. Yes, please.
Okay, Madam Chair. Just real quick, since before we go too far off, on 1719,
Yes.
There was a bill last year about this item, and then I know there was pushback or concerns about it, and so I'm wondering if this is an attempt to try to clean up or refine or clarify. And I know we were supportive of efforts to clarify some of the law enforcement legislation from last year. So I'm just wondering if you know any more about 1719, what it's trying to do.
Yes, and I think it does exactly what you said. I think provides some clarification. So let me read the summary, so that may provide clarification.
Okay.
The prohibition on the use and acquisition of military equipment is modified. The prohibition on ammunition of 0.5 caliber or greater is removed, effectively allowing law enforcement agencies to use and acquire ammunitions of 0.5 caliber or greater. The prohibition on using and acquiring firearms 0.50 caliber or greater is narrowed to apply only to rifle of 0.5 caliber or greater, effectively allowing law enforcement agencies to use and acquire other types of firearms. So I think it's narrowed down to the rifle, the 0.5 calibers, but I think it allows for other non-lethal arms to be purchased. I think that's part of the clarification, as I understand this bill. I touched base with the Sheriff's Office and their organization is tracking all those bills. So that was my recommendation, just to leave to the Sheriff's organization to track those, unless the board feels to take any particular position on this.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to 1723. Yeah, we already touched base on that, I'm sorry, to support that. 1753. And this particular bill requires the state agencies that administer funds from certain accounts created by the Climate Committee Act to offer consultation to federal recognized tribes whose tribal resources may be affected by the award of funds of these accounts. Requires applicants for funding from certain Climate Action Act, Climate Commitment Act accounts to engage in a pre-application process with all federal recognized tribes within the area. My recommendation at this point will be to be neutral, to give the opportunity to see how this bill evolves. At this point, we don't have access, the county, to this particular accounts, but certainly we could in the future. But at this point is recommendation to remain neutral. Moving on to 1799. And this particular bill establishes state goals related to organic materials management and requires local government solid waste plans to identify the volumetric capacity of managing organic materials in a manner consistent with state goals. My recommendation at this point is to oppose, because what it does is we already manage the organics with a third party. And I believe what this particular bill it puts some goals on the county, and it will be difficult to apply those with the vendor, because the vendor in this case that produces the organics, they already have a requirement by the Department of Ecology as to how they need to address the organics. So puts it on somewhat of a little condition to local governments that I don't think it will be appropriate. So my recommendation is to oppose this bill. Moving on to House Bill 1812. And this is related to establishes the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council as an independent agency separate from the Utilities and Transportation Commission. By creating this particular council, it authorizes clean energy product manufacturing facilities and renewable natural gas facilities to opt in into this process. My recommendation for you is to support this bill. It seems to be something really, something the board is interested in related to climate action, particularly related to natural gas. Moving on to 1838. This is related to protecting and restoring and maintaining habitat for salmon recovery. We have gone around. This requires for certain specific exemptions, public and private landowners who own property adjacent to a body of water identified in map or the riparian management zone map establishes and maintains protects the riparian management zone. This is a bill sponsored by the governor's office. The Washington State Association of Counties have some concerns at this point because is how that's going to overlap the short of management plan and some of the buffers they might be putting, they may be imposed to this. When we discussed this with WASAC, there needed to be more time to address the impacts of this particular piece of legislation. So at this point, my recommendation is for the board to remain neutral until we find more information. Moving on to 1841. This related to incentivizing rental accessory dwelling units. As you heard from the assessor a couple of weeks ago, there's many pieces of legislation related to the accessible dwelling units. This point is recommendations to remain neutral to see what bill is moving forward into the system, legislative process, and then we'll come back for you to be a little more narrow as to what those bills are. House Bill 1845 establishes a body worn camera grant program. That is something that certainly I recommend for you to support. What it does is establishes this program, a grant program for all the jurisdictions who have implemented body cameras to law enforcement to get access to operations and maintenance and perhaps purchase. I believe Commissioner Mejia stated this bill on one of her reports as part of the WASAC legislative group conversation. And I believe she asked the question whether it can be retroactive. And I believe this bill doesn't allow for retroactive, but certainly provides opportunities for additional funding for the operations and maintenance of those body cams. Commissioner Mejia, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, this was one of definitely that perked up my attention just because we just went through the budget process on this, and although we were able to get a $1 million grant and cover kind of a big chunk of that, there was still part of that where we weren't able to cover. And I know that a lot of counties that had made this investment were also concerned about, possibly getting some retroactive funds. Just from talking with WASAC, it looks like that is not an option with this. But my next follow-up question was in regards to kind of the data storage and coverage for extra public record staff, because I believe that's kind of what the request was from our sheriff's office. And it looks like that will be able to be covered. So it definitely got support from the WASAC Legislative Steering Committee.
Thank you. So my recommendation to support that. Moving on to House Bill 1855. This is related to authorizes the holder of a cannabis producer and processor license with the endorsement to make retail sales for a single licensed premises pursuant the rules adopted by the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board. There's a lot of confusing language, at least from our perspective. Also, CPED provided some recommendation to this point to remain neutral on that one. Moving on to 1856.
Ramiro, can I ask you something?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So like that bill, why do you have this, like, why do you have that one on our tracker? Why is that one that you thought Thurston County Commissioners would be concerned about?
Because it's related to the permit on a particular property. They can I believe they can exercise two different, they're producing and selling into a single property. So, and really relates to how we're gonna be providing the land use permit. Because one thing is the business license, the other is the land use. By combining the two may provide some issues, and that's how CPED is striking this bill.
Would we have to change our ordinance regarding that, or?
Well, maybe at this point, I really don't know the consequences of that.
Okay.
But perhaps.
Madam Chair, could I comment on that?
Go ahead, sir.
I think a piece of this is maybe a good comparison, and the county manager can tell us if I'm wrong on that, is that wineries are allowed to make wine and sell wine. And I think right now the marijuana producers are restricted. They're able to grow their product, but I don't believe they can make retail sales. And I think that's where this is going. Is that right?
Thank you, Commissioner. That's my understanding. The bill allows with a combined set of activities into a single property.
Although I'm not a marijuana advocate, I don't see why we ought to restrict businesses from being successful. That's my only concern.
So my recommendation.
More to come, I think.
Remain neutral on that, but.
I don't know. I kind of tend to support the private industry to be able to function. And I just use the comparison of the wine. I mean, there's people that don't appreciate alcohol either, but yet they are allowed to make wine and then sell wine. So I don't know what's coming, if it's going to be a niche activity farther down the road. I really don't know that much about it, but I don't know that we ought to have a double standard.
I take, there's always complexities to these that I'm always curious about. I do note that the sponsors include two of our own local representatives, so that makes me feel like whose opinion I trust in terms of their due diligence on these things. So that makes me think that I might be in agreement with Commissioner Edwards on this one.
Yeah. So
we'll change to support this and see how it goes.
Well, I guess I'd like to have more information. I'm kind of with Commissioner Mentor on attentively when I see somebody I know, but wouldn't hurt to have just a little more information about what the intent is. I really don't know. I think it's a comparison very similar to that is all.
So I will recommend if the board members to look into this particular bill and make your own determination as to how you see this may be applicable to what you see. I can come back and give you my report.
Sure, and maybe Commissioner Mentor might have more next week or something.
But,
next
so
meeting.
what I have is tentatively support this until more information. Is that?
That's fine. Sure.
Okay, thank you. 1856, that seems a pretty simple bill. As you know, the counties can opt in as part of the voluntary stewardship program under the Growth Management Act. And I think it moves the timeline in which those counties can opt in. In this particular piece of legislation moves the timeline to July 1st, 2023.
Aren't we already in the voluntary stewardship?
We're already in, so, but no, every county has opt-in. So, well, I think we can just take this out of our legislative process because it really.
Yeah, I would take it out. It doesn't really apply to us.
Yeah, let's take this out, thank you. 1871. This is directs the Department of Commerce to complete a report on alternative energy citing inequity by December 2022 with consultation from a utility technical advisory group that the Department of Commerce must perform. Establishes a joint select committee on alternative energy facility siting to make recommendations to the legislature by 2023. Prohibits the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council from submitting recommendations to the governor and prohibits the governor from acting on pending recommendations related to the proposed alternative energy facilities until the Department of Commerce provides their report. I think this is my recommendation to remain neutral. At the surface, it appears to be a good bill related to energy sightings. But as I read a little more in detail, I think it puts some constraints on the governor's ability to do something with this particular activity. So for me, it's good to track this because maybe something involved with do something different, taking the restrictions as to what the governor can do or cannot do. And my recommendation is to remain neutral.
I can't support anything that slows down siting of alternative energy facilities. And I've heard the arguments from Eastern Washington counties that they have concerns about it. And some of them are legitimate concerns about how the energy facilities are treated by the tax code and stuff. So I think there is some things that can be done to change and make it better. But this seems, just reading on the surface, this seems like sort of a kind of a strong, statement is what it looks like to me, pushback, trying to create a moratorium on siting like solar facilities and whatnot. And I don't think that's something I can support.
Yeah, and also it really eliminates the governor's ability to cite any type of activities without having this report in place.
Okay, we can look more at that one.
House Bill 1921 authorizes the county to enter an interlocal agreement with property owners of property with renewable energy facilities for payment in lieu of taxes. Requires the Department of Revenue to adopt rules developing an appraisal model of industry-specific trending tables of renewable energy property type. And I think this is a good bill to support because the property will give the ability to the property owners to have those as an incentive to implement renewable energy in their dwellings, and as a result, it will be a level of payment in lieu of taxes. But we need to put on the surface, it appears to be a very good bill. The details sometimes, the devil's on the details related to what the payment in lieu of taxes really transpired to be. But at this point, my recommendation is to support it, just on the concept. Moving on to the next one is 1948. This bill, the Department of Health assumes the role held by counties in water system receivership cases. I know the CPID and this particular bill says neutral. My recommendation is really to support this bill. What it does is and let's go back to the Thomashan and the Beverly Beach waters, that at some point, the because of the private utilities didn't have the financial elements to continue with those facilities, the next in line is local jurisdictions in case the county to absorb the responsibility of those. This piece of legislation changes that. Meaning the state is in first on line to take that responsibility and gives the option to counties to absorb those. So I think it's a good piece of legislation, and my recommendation is for you to support it.
Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
for further clarification on that, right now, we had to absorb certain utility operations, I don't know, because they were failing apparently, years ago. That's Tamashan and Boston Harbor and others.
No, Boston Harbor, Beverly Beach,
Okay.
Tamashan, yeah.
And so what this is going to be is, so when they're recognizing that that's a burden on the counties, and now the state is willing to step in and take that over?
Yes, and in fact, what it states is, in place of the county, the Department of Health will take over the responsibilities of being appointed receiver of a water system if there's no other receivers willing to be able to be named. So it changes that what it calls the chain of custody, and I think is a good bill.
Is there anything at all about public utilities districts or anything like that?
I think that's probably included on what they receive. There's no other receiver
Okay.
that is willing.
Okay, good enough, thank you.
Why isn't CPED enthusiastically supporting it?
I haven't had the chance to touch with them.
That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out too.
So I don't know, when I was reading this bill and I saw their recommendation, I said, this is something that we should support it because we have that experience. That's my opinion. Moving on to House Bill 1965. This is our bill. This is the bill that has been introduced related to providing, moving the veterans levy as well as the development disabilities levy outside of the regular property tax levy. The hearing is scheduled for this Thursday at 8 in the morning. And I believe, I know Robin is gonna provide testimony related to this bill. There's perhaps maybe some technical questions. She will be the best suited person to answer those technical questions related to this proposal. I believe Commissioner Mejia is also going to be providing public testimony in support of this bill. As I recall, there's going to be WASAC providing support to this bill, as well as I believe from another county, a veterans organization, who's also going to be providing support to this bill. Also, I was aware that perhaps a commissioner from Yakima County will be providing a testimony in opposition to this bill. And I believe the argument behind that is I believe that commissioner expects the state to take over or fund all the veteran services across the state. So I think there's not necessarily an opposition to the mechanics of this bill. There's just more a larger conversation that perhaps that commissioner may be testifying against it.
Can I ask a question on that?
Go ahead.
So, yeah, this is a lot of progress from what I can tell. There's 9 sponsors on here, and at the beginning we were kind of like, who's going to sponsor this? And
Right.
WASAC wasn't necessarily in line, but that's good. So it sounds like there's maybe some momentum building, and I'm wondering, I don't know all the names of all the legislators, just know some of them, and I'm just wondering, is there bipartisan support? I know one of our initial sponsors was, I think, Republican, and I think we had 1 Democrat, 1 Republican at the get-go, and I'm just wondering if there's been bipartisan support building for this.
I believe it's bipartisan support, but I think it's also some local legislators may have some questions related to this particular bill. What I do recommend the board members, if you can reach out to your seatmates, Lewis County and College counties, if you can probably really ask them to support this bill, I think that will be extremely, extremely beneficial. So if within your contacts, please reach out to your seatmates. I believe Commissioner Mejia is going to reach out to a Lewis County Commissioner. Hopefully that also occurs. And also reach out to the local legislators. We met when we met with the local delegation. It was a little bit of a mixed bag. In some, it was the concept that was very appealing on both sides of the aisle. But I know that Representative Orcutt had some issues related to this. So I will ask probably maybe Commissioner Edwards to reach out and see if there's at least an opportunity to continue with this hearing.
If Commissioner Mejia's got Lewis, I'll reach out to Grace Harbor because I know Vicky Raines pretty well, and I can kind of see where she's at and see if Grace Harbor would lend any support.
Thank you. And can I
Mason, sorry, too.
Yeah, Mason too.
I know all the Mason commissioners, so I'll check with them as well.
That'll be great. And can I just add the conversation last Friday for this bill, Robin joined me and she was able to answer a lot of technical questions that came up. The first hesitance was in regards to, is this going to raise taxes? And Robin was very able to answer those questions and ease those concerns for different commissioners. And so then kind of it turned into, well, this should be a state priority instead of the counties. And, you know, the conversation turned into, we can't keep waiting for this to be a priority of the state. We've already waited long enough, and so we need to move on this. So I'm hoping that, you know, with those conversations, we're able to kind of get this really pushed by. It had a lot of support in Wausau, which I remember, you know, when Commissioner Menser presented on this, and there was kind of, you know, kind of, so it was great to see that a lot of people, a lot of commissioners were really in support of it, and they spoke up about it. So that I felt like there was definitely a shift in tide.
Yeah, in September and in November, I outlined this, and it was kind of stunned silence from the crowd at Wausau. Nobody was really upset about it, but I didn't sense any great support. So that sounds like we're turning the tide a little bit.
Yeah.
Robin, you want to add any perspective on this?
I would just add that Deborah Munguia did a little bit of research and found that this levy for veterans has been in existence since like 1893, almost since the state formed. So it's very unlikely that the state's going to take over this expense. And it's time to do something to allow us to work more with this levy.
But I totally agree with Commissioner Menser. I think this bill has gotten good set of legs, in my opinion, to keep moving forward. And I have to give credit to Deborah as to how she really has worked very hard in making sure that this bill has a hearing, which again is on the 27th on Thursday. So keep me posted.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Sure.
So with your concurrence, Commissioner, and since we have additional items today, I'm just going to go through each of the remainder bills, and I'm just going to provide my suggestion to you. And without getting too much into the details, if you see anything that perhaps you may disagree with that, we can probably touch base again next week. Will that work?
That will work. We're starting to run short on time.
I'm just going to go through House Bill 1966 support. Next page, House Bill 1978 neutral. House Bill 1981 neutral. House Bill 2020 neutral. House Bill 5042 neutral. Senate Bill, 5042. Senate Bill 5275 neutral. Senate Bill 5380 neutral. Senate Bill 5540, that's within the auditor's purview. Senate Bill 5568, neutral. Senate Bill 5569, neutral. Senate Bill 5574, opposed. Senate Bill 5577, neutral. Senate Bill 5584 is within the auditor's office. She's striking that. Senate Bill 5585, support. Senate Bill 5586, support. Senate Bill 5587, which the companion bill is 1684, a very broad recommendation to support it. 5593 to support. Delete from the list 5621, that pertains to cities. I will delete that. Senate Bill 5632, support. Senate Bill 5663, support. Senate Bill 5697, neutral. Moving on to the last page. Senate Bill 5742, companion bill, House Bill 1996, opposed. Senate Bill 5796, support. And Senate Bill 5882 to remain neutral.
Okay.
And I will update this report for next week, and we'll keep you posted as how we progress on these.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Menser.
I know we're a little short of time, but I just wanted to bring up a topic. All of us serve on different boards and commissions, and they have specific issue areas. You know, intercity transit might want to weigh in on a transit, piece of legislation. I bring this up because we just had climate steering committee meeting yesterday. We had an overview of the key climate bills. None of them are on Ramiro's tracker. We're going to be talking about a letter of support from the Climate Action Steering Committee. And there was a difference of opinion amongst the different jurisdictions. Like, do those opinions need to go through their councils before they could feel comfortable signing? So I guess this board, I feel like, has always kind of left us to our own devices in terms of our boards and commissions. I wouldn't be signing as the Board of County Commissioners, but I wanted to ask my seatmates whether or not they wanted me to bring, like, if we're not there yet, but I'm anticipating in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be some letters of support circulated from the Climate Action Steering Committee as to House Bill blah. Do my seatmates want me to bring those back for discussion before I sign off, or would you rather I just use my discretion as the county's representative on the committee? I could see it either way, but I'm just asking.
Chair?
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
So like if making it easier to build nuclear plants or something like that you're referring to, right?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
whatever. I mean, one of them is, for example, there's a bill about requiring state buildings to use, to convert to electrification, to set a good example for whatever. And okay, that's not on Ramiro's tracker. It applies to Thurston County. So the Climate Action Steering Committee is considering weighing in support of that. There's like 5 or 6 of them. So I didn't know, we're always pressed for time. I didn't know if you guys wanted me to bring those back for us to discuss as a board, or you'd rather me just make a judgment as your representative on the climate committee.
I guess my concern on some of that type of stuff is that I don't know if it's realistic to have everything go electric when natural gas, for an example, is so there's some debate there. So I do
Sure.
have some concerns like that, but I respect your position on that as well.
For me, I feel like we are always pressed for time. I feel if there's something that a commissioner is unsure of supporting or not supporting in one of their committees, then they can bring it back. But usually, I mean, for WASAC, they're asking you for your vote like right on the spot sometimes. And so for me, sometimes if it looks like it's, I'm kind of always looking to my seatmates and kind of getting their opinions on things. So sometimes I feel like I have a good feel on the preference on something that's straightforward, but I think we can all take our own approach because we know the committees that we're sitting in. And if it's something that's really, debateful, then it can be brought back. But that's just kind of how I feel about it.
prerogative of the chair.
All right, sounds good.
So I feel like, with the steering committee,
So what I'm hearing is if there's time and if there's a feeling that it's somewhat controversial, maybe bring it back, touch base, but give ourselves the authority to make decisions in the moment or on non-controversial items. That's fair.
Sure, sounds good to me.
yeah, okay. Okay, anything else? Okay.
No, ma'am. I do have a question for the board. I have an executive session is later today as item 5 related to the Black Lake Special Use District. Elizabeth needs to leave the meeting by 11:45 today. She has another appointment to attend. So I may ask Madam Chair to watch the time. Maybe moving into that executive session by 11:35. And whatever items we don't cover, then we'll bring those items next week. I don't think nothing is present. I think we can probably get to the potential dangerous dog designation. That is somewhat of a pressing item, maybe after that. The fairgrounds project, I can bring that for next week. It's not a pressing issue on that as well, with your concurrence.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Does it sound good to the commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Renser.
I would just say we should go into that executive session now. I mean, 10 minutes I don't think is going to be adequate for that discussion. And if Elizabeth has to go at 11:45, let's just do that now. And then whatever time we have left,
Could I ask provided direction on the docket items, please?
Okay.
So, staff provided a briefing related to the 2023 docket process, which included on the comprehensive plan docket 14 proposals and 7 carryovers. On the development code docket, 20 proposals, which include 16 new proposals, 2 carryover and 2 new proposals, I believe. You also added shooting zones, SEPA time extension, as well as a small business related to the Thurston County Code. At this point, I'm not asking for the board to weigh in any of those items. What I asked the board is to allow the public process to begin, meaning the 20-day public process to receive public testimony based on everything, all the items, including the 3 additional items that you added on January 12th. That is the ask that I have for the board, is to allow staff to move forward with the public process.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I'm initially good with that. I do think we have to consider, and I don't know if my seatmates are aware of this, but Department of Transportation and maybe Lewis County has a proposal afoot to put a new interchange in just south of exit 88 off of I-5 into that industrial area on the north end of Lewis County, south end of Thurston County. And I think it ties in with the possibility of some type of a matching zone area in Thurston County that matches what Lewis County did on the north end of their county against I-5. So I don't know how much any of you know about that, but I'd like to make sure that we're moving forward on that so we can be creating jobs in Thurston County as well. So I just let it go with that for now. I'm ready to move forward on a lot of that stuff, at least for discussion.
Commissioner Menser? Thank you, sir. Commissioner Menser?
I'm good with the staff proposal.
Okay. I'm good with that too.
Okay, so thank you, commissioners, staff. Let's move forward with the public process, and then we'll come back, and there's many steps that needs to follow up to the public process. We'll schedule a meeting where staff will provide what we have received in terms of as a result of the public process. Chris, Maya, anything else that you need today on this?
None from me, thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, so with that, there are 2 executive sessions that are set. The first executive session is per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency, Black Lake SUD. Commissioner's action may follow. The second executive session is per RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1C to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause the likelihood of a decreased price, building availability. Commissioner's action may follow. With that, we'll be in there until probably noon.
Yeah, until noon, and items, the potential dangerous dog designation, the fairgrounds project, I will move to a different day.
Perfect.
So,
Okay.
with that in mind, Teresa, can you,
I have a preliminary question, County Manager.
I
was
would
at
ask
a-
Teresa Reed to leave the Zoom meeting. Teresa?
Yes. Are you ready for me to turn it off?
Please leave the Zoom meeting. Thank you. Yes, Commissioner, before you want to have that conversation in the
I
executive
want to have
session?
this conversation on the record.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I was at a meeting last night where representatives of the petitioners made a representation that for us to discuss this in executive session would be an illegal meeting. And I just want Elizabeth to confirm that this topic that we're going to be addressing on item 5 is appropriate topic for an executive session under the OPMA.
Yes, Commissioner, in my opinion, it's an appropriate topic for an executive session.
Okay, thank you.
So give us a minute to cut the video off.
Okay.